first horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Trayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we are discussing Gremlins 2, the new batch from 1990. But most importantly, we have a returning champion to the show, Flophouse co-host, and no better person to discuss Gremlins 2 with, Dan McCoy. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hello. I mean, it's possible that my other co-host, Elliot Kalin, might be equally, if not better, but we did our best. He's a very busy man. He was very intrigued by the possibility.
Yes.
So we couldn't quite. I will try to be good enough for both of us because this is a great fave.
Yeah, if he needs to get his ideas out, and I know how that can kind of be, after he listens to this, he can send us 5 minutes of ramblings if he wants to, and we'll just like post that in addition.
Direct you to his manifesto on Gremlins 2 that he posted online.
Right. And if he feels the need that he needs to interrupt, even post a posting, he can say like, "I'd like to interrupt Dan at that point and bring up this point." So we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So
or at least special editions where he interrupts me.
Correct. Right. Dan, I do know that this is a big favorite of yours, so that's why I definitely wanted to get you on for this one. The last time I watched this, I was with you and Stuart in the theater. I can't remember which theater it was.
I think it was the Nighthawk.
Nighthawk. Yeah. So I do remember being at that show with you two, which was an absolute blast. I think that was the first time I had seen it in the theater since I was a kid, really.
And I think it's a movie that when it came out, I'm sure we'll talk about it, probably confused people a lot more than it did, when we all saw it together. Like people knew what to expect, and seeing it in an audience that was primed for the type of movie that it was, like everything worked so well, I thought.
Completely. Yeah. Lots of audience participation in the best way. So what is your history with this film? I assume you've been watching it since you were a young lad.
Yeah, I have specific history with this that I can remember because, as a kid, I saw the first Gremlins, loved it, was like, I think a lot of young people who become horror fans start out with a movie like Gremlins and they're like, yeah, this is great. It's fun. It's funny. Like, it's scary enough for me as a kid. I remember specifically, I went to the theater to see this on my birthday because when I was a kid, my parents didn't take us to the movies that much. And I was movie obsessed. And so at a certain point, all I wanted to do on birthdays was like, we're going to go see a movie in the theater. And they took us and, some friends out. And I looked, it would have been my 12th birthday. I looked it up. This came out on June 15 and my birthday is June 19. So I was primed. You better believe I was excited to see Gremlins 2, the new batch. I had seen HBO first looks of Gremlins 2.
Exactly. Yes.
Whatever.
Entertainment Tonight.
And as a kid with that mindset, I was a little disappointed when I first saw it. I definitely was entertained, but I was ready for another sort of light horror film. I was looking for something that would be scary. And so when I was seeing this thing where Hulk Hogan interrupts it, I'm like, that's dumb. The way that kids can be, I wanted it to be serious, a serious movie about gremlins,
Yes.
But
more Santa Claus death stories, please.
As I watched it, over and over as a kid, when you do with something that kind of confuses you, your mind needs to figure it out. I definitely grew to love it more and more and understand sort of what its deal was.
Yes.
And now, it's my preferred of the two. I love both of them, but it's my preferred Gremlins movie. And I absolutely think it's amazing. But that was the journey I went through with Gremlins 2.
Right. I admire that you chose to see Gremlins 2 over what was released the exact same day, Dick Tracy, which is also a fun movie. But evidently, Joe Dante said that the schedule got shuffled around a little bit and Warner Brothers wanted to protect the Batman biggest opening of all time type of thing. So they threw it up against Dick Tracy to siphon off a little cash from that, which, I enjoy Dick Tracy. Yeah. But that would have been quite a decision for a 12-year-old boy to make it at the time.
You know what? Like, for all I say that we never saw movies, I think I saw that one in the theater too. But I think it was like, I don't know. We went to my grandparents and they were like, "Oh, let's take the kids to a movie or whatever,"
That we understand from our time.
Yeah.
Dick Tracy. I hope he still has that watch phone. Yeah.
The height of technology.
That used to be a reward when I was a kid. Like, if we do all our chores during the week, you can exit off on a chart. If you're good enough, we can go see a movie. But I think I saw so many bad movies that I was eventually just like, hey, it's not worth it. And then I just lived the rest of my life in slop.
No more chores for me.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And you saw this as a kid too, right, John?
Absolutely, yeah. And I actually was I started off enjoying this one more because of being a kid and being like, well, I like the first one, but it's too scary. This one has the edges rounded off, and I'm a giant baby. So
the cartoon opening was more your speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You were excited about the Warner Brothers beginning.
I loved the Looney Tunes too as a kid. And now I understand it as like Dante being like, this is the mission statement for what this movie's going to be. This is my Looney Tunes anarchy. But at the time as a kid, I'm like, what? I thought this was a Gremlins movie. Why?
Right.
What's happening? Yeah. Are we in the right theater?
Between that opening and the very first revolving door gag that's sped up really fast with the lady inside of it, it's just like, well, yes, this will be a cartoon from here on out.
Well, even that Looney Tunes open just ends with, oh yeah, Gremlins 2. Like the title just gets thrown up there like, yeah, just let's move on with it. Yeah, you're at Gremlins 2. And I like that, how the folks is just this chaos right at the beginning. And like you said, it sort of sets up the entire movie.
By the way, before we get into details, to cement my adult child bona fides,
please.
This is excellent stuff for a podcast, a non-visual medium. But I took down from behind me. There's a blank space behind me, as you can see on the Zoom thing. It's because that's where all my Gremlins stuff lives. I have here. I've got Gizmo. I've got the caroling Gremlin. I've got from the first film. From the theater, he's got the popcorn on the ears. One of them just fell off.
Nice.
I have, of course, Greta here, otherwise known as Lady Gremlin, and I have this painting that I myself made. This acrylic painting of Phoebe Cates delivering her monologue from Gremlins.
That is great. Yes. So if listeners need to check Dan's bona fides on this, they're all there. We can assure you on this one.
Can confirm.
So yeah, Joe Dante didn't even really want to make this movie. This came out 6 years after the previous one, and they were throwing around stupid ideas like Gremlins go to Mars and Gremlins go to Vegas. Now, I personally am very curious about Gremlins go to Mars. Like, are we talking like little spacesuits? Are we talking like a full science fiction film? Yeah, I'm not against that one.
So is there? My problem with this is like, are there Mars colonies that they're like dealing with there, or are we just saying like there's a space mission to Mars and they are bedeviling the astronauts on the way there? Because that makes a little sense to me, especially given what Gremlins are,
It's just them and Matt Damon. That's it. Just
it's like what people always say about the Muppet movies type of thing. Like you have a whole bunch of gremlins and just one human dealing, But I would, I would like to say like maybe the first 30 minutes is your rocket on the way there. And then like, the serious business of setting up a Mars colony. So, I'd go for that. But yeah, he said that he would only come back if he got 3 times the budget and complete creative control. And I love that he was, especially because he had 2 not so well received movies just before this, but he had the juice to be able to say that, considering the success of the first one.
Yeah, and I adore this movie, but I also feel like, man, this is like Joe Dante setting his career on fire. Like the man, I love his movies, but it feels like, if he ever had a chance of like a comeback, it was ruined by him just being like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do here.
Well, it's really, talk about the mission statement at the beginning when the old man is like,
a man can always agree with others. It is more difficult to agree with oneself.
That is Joe Dante being like, look, I know what I like. You're getting what I like. And I know I'm right.
Yes. So after this was Matinee, which has a cult following too.
A wonderful movie, but not a success. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I was looking it up after this. Then he did like a live action, like Looney Tunes movie that he described as like the worst year and a half of his life. And I'm not, but whenever I say, and now he's directing TV, I'm never saying that, as faint praise, because that's still very difficult to do. But I think he directs TV now, if at all. And he podcasts a lot, like the best of us.
Oh, he did 10 episodes of Hawaii Five-0. I didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if he's got another feature in him, I'd love to see it.
Well, it was on one of those podcasts. I believe it was the movies that made us. It was my favorite quote about this movie from Joe Dante, where it was Panos Cosmatos praising him for Gremlins 2. And he just goes, they wanted more Gremlins. I gave them more Gremlins. And that sums it up pretty well.
Right. After requesting fewer Gremlins than the first Gremlins, now we're going to go further.
I guess looking at it, Small Soldiers was a minor success for him. It was a $40 million budget and made 71.8. Who knows what the ad cost was
on that.
Yeah.
Right.
I just remember the Burger King burger tie-in for that. It had an onion ring on it. That's always what I think of when I see that movie. I'm always like, oh yeah, it's like the rodeo burger or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
So congrats to Joe Dante on the rodeo burger.
Yeah, it's back. As you were saying, it starts with the older man in Chinatown, New York. Robert Picardo, who of course I know best as the Doctor from Voyager on Star Trek, is coming to try to clear this man out so that Clamp Enterprises can bulldoze his shop and create his giant building, which he says, of course, not at all. And then it makes me laugh every time I watch it. But then his assistant just says, like, we can just wait this out. This old man will die, which seems rather cruel for a beginning, which leaves Gizmo homeless. And we see his little legs again, which is always creepy. But we've got Phoebe Cates and Billy, who have just moved to New York from their small little town, and they are working at Clamp. Is it Clamp Enterprises? It's like it's the Trump building, of course. Yeah. Obviously, they both work there. He's an artist and she's a tour guide. And my favorite bit from this opening is not just the revolving door gag, but also the sign off from the voiceover intercom that says, I've been telling my partner that every day that she leaves for work in the morning since I rewatched this recently.
Also, it has one of the best visual gags when you first see Clamp Tower or whatever it is here, where you have the revolving Earth, and from the angle it's first shot at, it looks like a normal sphere Earth, and then the camera moves around, so you see that that's just the angle it was at. It's clamped. It's clamped to the big C. It's being crushed by Daniel Clamp's C.
I did not even notice that, but man, like that's such a, like I was telling John before this, like, I watched this a couple of times in preparation for this, and of course I've seen it many times, but I would write down notes and I would just kind of lose track of every gag, because there's a gag in this movie every 30 seconds or so, whether it be background or foreground or like an audio gag or something like that. But this movie is jam packed. Like
all those things really push forward the whole gimmick in the first one of like inventions that don't work. And that they've just boosted up to like, what if there was an entire corporation just basically built on this stuff? It feels particularly resonant now. We've made a whole bunch of like improvements to things that weren't really problems. Like, I love the voiceovers in this. This time around, I just fell in love with them. Like when he goes into the bathroom and the voice is like,
Mister, welcome to the men's room.
That's not a thing anyone needs, but it rules.
I want that now.
Yeah.
I love all the automated skyscraper stuff in here. Like, I guess it makes thematic sense. Like, for a Gremlins movie, the Gremlins, of course, being off of, like this World War II idea of like this is what gets into the machinery and destroys everything. Like this is a building that already kind of exists in this world where nothing works. And at the end, Clamp says, "Oh, if you build a place for things come and live in there." Like, it has thematic resonance, but in terms of plot, it doesn't need to be in this like goofy ass building, but it's just funny. Like, it's a lot of good gags.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also a convenient way to get a whole bunch of different set pieces in one place. You know, like if you're in New York, why would you be over here at this lab or over here at this TV station?
Right.
Just getting it all in one place is nice. And it's also like I really was, because I just watched it recently, the Jacques Tati movie Playtime, which is a much more sort of French version of going into this office building in the 60s and how cold and gray and everything is. And this has that same kind of look, but a lot more sort of like 80s, 90s angular. It's still kind of cool.
Sure.
And I really like the set design in this overall. Just the way the building looks is fantastic.
And of course, you know, if you're going to have the Gremlins go to New York, you could have a sprawling citywide romp, of course. But we got to remember, these puppets need to be shot in a way where the puppeteers can be under the floor. So keeping it all in one location makes so much more sense, you know, instead of being like, they're on a subway train or something like that, which would be rather difficult.
They're on a boat
to film
going to Manhattan for most of the movie.
Yes. Just keep them localized on, the boat. Early on, we meet Marla Bloodstone, which is, you know, at the top, just such a fantastic name. She's what, like, you know, the late 80s corporate stereotype wanting to like climb the ladder.
Yeah. Well, but with a spin on it. Like, I mean, she is this like workaholic, clearly, you know, takes any chance to like be romantically interested in anyone who could help the workaholic side of her. Like,
yes,
but she's also doing like such a broad, goofy, like New York caricature, but it's great. I mean, no one needs to know what does it for me, but I apologize. I'm going to be horny on Maine for a second. Like when I was younger, like I was all about Phoebe Cates in these movies, and like she's a beautiful, beautiful woman, but as an older man, I'm like, well, she's kind of like, you know, I think deliberately kind of dopey in this movie. And I was just like, I was all about Marla. And like how like mean and dismissive Marla is.
Yeah, that was very formative in young John Mayer's life. Someone just full of recessive genes yelling at me. Oh yes. Hello.
a take charge broad, just screaming at your inadequacies.
Yeah, it was a New York accent.
Like,
absolutely.
And telling you how you can improve.
And she's so funny in this. Like, you know, other than this, like, I think she's best known for 16 Candles, probably.
Yep.
But had a long career, but like, definitely, I feel like could have been bigger. She's so good.
Yeah.
Very, very funny.
So yeah, she kind of helps us as the viewer get introduced to the beginnings of the building with Billy and like, you know, the rules, like he can't have any like fun artwork or anything like that around his desk because what's the character's name? Forster.
Yes.
I just want to call him the Doctor constantly because of Voyager. But like, the Doctor comes around and screams at him for a while.
Maybe everybody here would like to do some little touches. Coffee mugs that say world's greatest lover. The ashtray that reads, rest your butt here. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Mr. Peltzer? Coming to work every day in a $200 million flea market.
I know Robert Picardo mostly from Dante movies. I did not watch that. I like Star Trek, but I did not watch that Star Trek series. And so I was surprised, like you would know this because there's apparently a famous scene where he does this, but I learned while going down a rabbit hole while watching Gremlins 2 for the billionth time that Robert Picardo has a beautiful singing voice. And
yes.
There's like he deploys it in Star Trek. He sings some opera at one point, but
I never watched the entirety of Voyager. I think during the pandemic, I meant to get around to it and I made it like season and a half in and I was like, oh, this is kind of rough, but maybe I need an episode guide.
I forget, isn't he in Legend? Isn't he like Meg Mucklebones? Like the evil witch?
Meg Mucklebones?
Meg Mucklebones, yeah.
I love that.
What
name.
A great name.
Yeah. That was a movie I watched a bunch as a kid, but I could tell you nothing about it because it was just sort of like a dream and I fell asleep a lot. But yeah, he's he play. I don't know if they have a different person do the voice, but he's a creepy witch in that movie.
Oh, cool.
Oh, fun. Man.
Yeah. Robert Picardo gets out there.
We meet Grandpa Fred, who is a horror host that wants to be a news journalist, a serious journalist. And I love that he is never outside of his Grandpa Munster outfit, his costume for this. So I have such a soft spot for horror hosts. So whenever they turn up as characters in like regular horror movies, I'm always on their side.
Yeah, and I like the Joe Dante cameo there as well as the director of the. I didn't pick that up until like watching it again this morning. I was like, oh wait, that's Dante.
I like how you talked about earlier, like the skyscraper is a device to have all of these things in the same place, but it's also funny how a bunch of it doesn't really make sense. Like as much as Clamp is, based on Trump to some degree, which, doesn't play as well now. He's also, based on Ted Turner, and like you see that a lot more with the cable stuff in here. But why does this cable channel have like an old fashioned horror host? Like, plus they have people doing gene splicing on the top floor. It's so silly, but it's great.
Well, especially because if you think about it for 2 seconds, Clamp would want something more cutting edge than like a throwback horror host being in his building. I don't know what a cutting edge horror host would be necessarily, but, seems incongruous. So, of course, that's definitely a Joe Dante love.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, and that's sort of like, and he complains, Grandpa Fred, about them tampering with stuff.
All the great horror movies are in black and white. Mr. Clamp only likes color. That guy's strange.
They only want stuff in color, and there's even like an announcement about they have Casablanca in color with a new ending, a happy ending.
With a new ending.
Yeah. It is, I mean, again, sort of thematically for the movie, like attempts at nostalgia to redo nostalgia just won't work. So just embrace the new insanity that's this, because we can't go back. Right. I cannot give you the same Gremlins feeling.
We're then introduced to Dr. Catheter, played by Christopher Lee. In the novelization, evidently, his name is Cushing Catheter, which after Peter Cushing, obviously, which is just a funny first name, I think, and Cushing Catheter. But my favorite bit about this is that evidently on the first day of filming, Christopher Lee shows up, goes right to Joe Dante and says, I am so sorry for being in The Howling 2. Your sister is a werewolf. So, which I kind of like that sequel, if I'm remembering it well enough, which we will get to at some point. But
how did Dante react to that? That's delightful.
I don't know, but by that point, I'm sure Dante had nothing to do with Howling Part 2. Definitely not Howling for the marsupials. That's a whole other.
I mean, I'm sure Dante, like, he would be like, "A job's a job, man." Like, do what you gotta do.
I get it
for sure. Yeah, and also you're Christopher Lee. I should be like bowing to you, good sir.
Well, just like this is how I know Christopher Lee. This was my first interaction with Christopher Lee, like seeing him in something. So for the longest time, he was the Gremlins 2 guy. Like I'd be like, oh, this Hammer film where he's Dracula. It's like, oh, they got the Gremlins 2 guy. That's cool.
Well, and that's one way in which I think this movie works better for me now, because when I saw it as a kid, this is just a guy, but now knowing who Christopher Lee is, I found myself laughing so hard this time about when the twins play the music and Gizmo is dancing and Christopher Lee standing there just deadpan disgusted by it. It was so funny to me.
There's even a couple of times when Lee puts his hand on his chin and he's almost kind of smiling, and I'm like, oh, he does enjoy things sometimes. But yes, the postman brings him something, and he says that he was waiting on some sort of disease, I believe. So
that postman is Tuco from Breaking Bad.
Really?
Raymond Cruz. It blew my, because just like the way it was some like look he gave. So I'm like, is that? It kind of sounds like it. And I looked it up. Yeah, same guy.
That music. Where did you hear it?
Oh, da 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 da. Oh, isn't that by Sting?
He's not murdering people, so I didn't recognize it.
So said postman goes back down to Billy's area, and he's whistling a tune, and he's whistling Gizmo's famous cute little piece of music. And Billy, of course, picks up on that, which sends Billy back up to the lab. On his way up, he opens a monkey cage, and all the monkeys are named after the 3 chipmunks, of course. So we've got tons of these stupid names all through the movie. evidently when all the gremlins like spring the animals towards the end of the film, like all the monkeys were legit afraid of all the gremlin puppets, and they wouldn't come out of their cages. Well, yeah,
this whole series is just about terrorizing apes.
They knew that they tried to put monkeys in gremlins costumes the first time around.
Like, no.
I've heard the stories.
Yeah, Billy takes Gizmo to the men's room to have a chat, and this is where we hear you're in the men's room now, or
hey,
yeah. You're the man now dog for some reason came to mind.
You know what? I don't need it to be so heavily gendered, but that like affirmation would make me feel pretty good.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. Certainly.
Just,
I'm coming in here to do some business.
Buddy, you're doing great.
Yeah. Sure. It's only 9:48 a.m., but you're going to make it.
So yes, having a voice being like, you made good boom boom, buddy. I'd be like, yeah, thanks, building.
Now I know how to sign off all my emails to you about this podcast
job,
from
buddy.
now on.
Instead of the death threats. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, for sure. Clamp comes down to check out Billy's place. And this is like the first time we really get a handle on Clamp. And man, it's been said before, but it really hit me over the head this time. Like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Not saying I want to work for him, but I love what he took with the words on the page. And I'm going to even go so far as to say there is like this certain Dale Cooperness to him that I love. It's just the enthusiasm, the boy-like charm. You know,
he
did such a good job with this.
John Glover is so lovable, and like, you know, it's been talked about. Like on the page, he was not supposed to be such a nice man. He was supposed to be what you might expect more of. Like, oh yeah, this is like an out of touch, like rich guy. He's going to be the villain, but like he is just goofy and so enamored of all of the shit in his building that like he just brings so much charm that they, you know, retooled the character and really played into that, and he's so good in this.
Yeah, you can't help but love him.
This is excellent.
Isn't that terrific?
You've captured the whole essence of the project right here. Look at the kids with the kites. That's warmth. I like warmth.
It's such like a secret sauce to the rest of the film, because you don't need any more. I mean, the gremlins aren't mean, as we've discussed necessarily, so we don't need any more like anger or like a shouty boss or something like that to make this better. It's so much better that he's kind of enamored with everything.
Yeah. Well, it also sort of helps the medicine go down a little bit smoother of sort of some of the subversive satire in this movie, instead of just being this like on the nose, like, look at this. Can't think of the name of the guy in It's a Wonderful Life, but just this mean plutocrat that's coming out of everything like that. He's still just, Potter. He's a turd. Potter, thank you. He's a turd, but he's still just like, he's fun to watch.
Yeah, he's more misguided than he is evil. Like,
exactly, yeah.
Marla asks Billy out to dinner, and you know, she takes off her glasses when she makes this request, which you know is that she's getting saucy when that happens.
This is a very chic new restaurant. It's Canadian. They clean the fish right at your table.
And she says, when art and business join forces, anything can happen. And so that's very clearly a Joe Dante bit there. But yeah, they finish off with nothing but chocolate mousse. And they bring a chocolate mousse's head to the table. And like a lot of these gags just make me think of like Airplane or something like that. You know, just a full on Naked Gun, Zucker Brothers type of movie.
This is a joke I don't think I got when I was a kid, because I didn't know like what moose was, like not the animal moose. Like I didn't know the MOUSSE or what, you know, like the. So I'm like, oh, I guess this is a Canadian dessert. They have moose
what they eat up there.
Right. In the meantime, while he's out having sexy dinner with Marla, Phoebe Cates has taken what she thinks is Gizmo back to the house, but it's like a doofy-eyed mogwai that has since replicated out of Gizmo when he gets a little fountain water on him. What's this guy's name? I think he has Daffy.
Daffy, maybe? I think, is the one, with the eyes that spin around and such.
Right. He gets a lot of screen time in this movie.
He does.
Not saying it's bad. He just gets a lot of spotlight.
Yeah, and this was funny to me when Audrey, my wife, watched Gremlins 2 for the first time with me. You know, she's like indulging, like, oh, this is an important movie. Like she enjoyed the movie, but
10 days after your first date, you're like, I need you to understand me.
That's what you're getting into.
I'm trying not to be that guy, but I think probably whenever it happened, it was similar to that. But, you know, Gizmo being like pushed down into the grating or whatever, and this other Mogwai going home. Like, it was really funny to me, and I thought it was really sweet how much Audrey was just like perturbed by this. Like, she just wanted a movie where like Gizmo gets to go home with Billy and they have a good time and everyone's happy, you know?
Yeah, they do. Because I was thinking about that, because the first part of this movie, they really lean into how cute and cuddly Gizmo is. Because you see him like walking around very cutely and looking all sad, whatever. And they spend the next hour just torturing him.
They torture the hell out of him.
They put him in a cage.
Yeah, they put him in a cage.
Yeah.
They copy him with bright light and hit him with trains. It's great. My partner Hazel actually had never seen this movie before and was watching it alongside with me. I just said a couple of times, I have so many questions, and then just fell asleep.
There's no good answers.
Not now.
There's no good answers.
I was like, this is the beginning of your questions. It does not get any easier.
Yes. You're going to start questioning me.
Wait until the musical numbers at the
end. Right. But yeah, she ends up taking home Daffy, who she thinks is Gizmo, which I'm like, come on. You know, you should be able to figure this out, but okay. Daffy does far more rascaling around in the apartment than your typical Gizmo would. You know, all you got to do for Gizmo is give him a comic book and some 3D glasses, and he'd probably be okay. This guy is just bouncing off the walls, and it's a problem. I do enjoy that out of truly nowhere, the Futtermans show up, but I guess it makes more sense if this was like, you know, his parents like coming to see it. Not that you can't have family friends come visit. How often do you, Dan, put up old family friends in your small apartment?
So like what would have been people, say my parents' age from my hometown.
Exactly, from your hometown.
I don't think it has ever happened. I don't find it totally implausible that maybe when I was younger as Billy and Kate are, that my parents would have been like, hey, these people are coming into town or whatever. But
show them a good time.
I mean, I think it's funny that that's what you're hung up on, and not the fact that the last time we saw Murray Futterman, he was being run down by a bulldozer driven by gremlins.
Well, that's true.
We can assume that he survived it. It's fine. But
so yeah, he gets run over by a bulldozer with his wife, and then both of them show up. He is in full kind of like a PTSD mode about the gremlins, because he keeps hearing like chirping and noises, and I do love that his wife has to say, yes, I hear those noises too, to kind of like be on his side about it.
Well, I also like how they softened his overall racism to foreigners to just the Russians. They're just like, that's safe. We can do that right now. That's cool.
Boy, Billy, this is some crazy city. We tried to get a cab up here. Do you know they got Russian guys driving cabs in this burg? I mean, what if somebody got into a cab with a briefcase full of atomic secrets or something like that?
And now it's okay to be that way again, right?
Thank God.
You know, right? It's come back.
Triumph of the
Futtermans, baby.
Has spun.
Yes, right. Back at the Clamp Tower, there's of course a frozen yogurt stand, and the Mogwais are rascaling around there eating, and it is definitely after midnight by now.
Yeah.
So we all know what's about to happen. We end up tilting up. The camera tilts up from a security officer's attack, and we see gremlin eggs finally. This next bit is just weird too, where it just cuts to an outside a police wagon that is unloading mimes for no reason.
Yeah, you know, Paddy Wagon is round up a bunch of mimes. I presumably
good
unlicensed buskers, I guess, that
right.
Giuliani's New York is cracking down on. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I can get behind the idea of rounding up mimes and tossing them in jail for sure. But I do love that just from a production standpoint. It's just like, I don't know, I got to find 7 mimes, get them all in hair and makeup today just for a 6-second gag. But I appreciate that.
Just going around New York in unmarked vans and just nabbing them. What are they going to do? Dream about it? No.
Yeah. Gremlins cut the power. Then we get the famous deconstruction of the rules scene, which is certainly fun, but I found it a little less fun this day and age just because of the stupid internet. Before people were unable to have a good time with movies now and post about it online. This kind of annoyed me just a tiny bit, but I think I'm just taking it too seriously.
Wait. What if one of them eats something at 11 o'clock, but then he gets something stuck in his teeth?
Yeah, like a caraway seed or a sesame seed.
Whatever, right.
And then after 12 o'clock, it comes out. Now, he didn't eat that after midnight. Look, I didn't make the rules, okay?
Well, it's like just last night I was talking to a friend of the show, Tyler, about, because he was like, shouldn't they multiply in the snow? Snow is water.
Yeah.
And just coming up with all these bizarre rules that no, water's got to be at a certain temperature. Before the
Sure.
Gremlins enzymes can attach it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Jim, is your problem that because of the internet, things like have been picked apart so much, it just it reminds you of that, or like?
I think so. It's like a CinemaSins type of thing, like counting down everything.
I think for me it still works because number one, this is kind of I think I remember Dante talking about like this is the sort of stuff that they picked apart on set, like making fun of like the first movie, and they just like sort of put it in. But also the result of the scene is then a gremlin pops up and like attacks the guy who's like picking it apart. Just like basically the message of the scene is shut up.
Yeah,
shut up. Right. Yes. Yeah. Just repeat to yourself. It's just a show. Yeah. I should really just relax. Yes. I do like that kill shot though, because not only does he come out of the control center for no reason, but it's another reminder of how big the gremlin puppets are.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I forget and I think that they're about, yay high or so. But this guy is like half of his or like a full torso large.
And is that Mohawk who comes out of the thing?
Oh, yes.
I think it's
not Stripe,
not
but Mohawk.
Stripe. And I think it's funny that I guess every time Mogwai are forced to reproduce by having water sprayed on them, there's always inevitably like one super bad one that has like a stripy thing on the top of his head.
Yeah.
That is just part of the deal.
Always one punk that comes out.
The bad seed. Or I guess the worst seed, I guess.
Then we cut to a full-on TV studio, another room that's in this giant building, filming Microwave with Marge, which seems like a pretty fun cooking show. And definitely as someone who's done a lot of video and TV shows for the Food Network, I would definitely like to get Microwave Marge a current contract, because I find her much more interesting than a lot of the other people. But she makes, God, I can't even remember half of her recipes, but it's just like microwave bologna on top of cheese or something to that effect.
Like rolls of deli meat with stuff inside of it, and then there's like a noodle thing. Like, speaking of, picking apart things, I looked at of course, IMDb goofs for this, and someone was very perturbed that, there's a gremlin inside the pot of whatever Marge is making, and presumably there's broth in there or whatever that has not caused it to spawn, but
to bubble up. Yeah. Fresh water, maybe,
no,
is what needs to be done.
The contents of the broth, the chemical composition is such that it blocks the enzymes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Right.
I love that. I think that is she's making is like just has the phrase cheese product in there somewhere, which I love.
Right. Whole bunch of gremlins attack. They put metal in a microwave and start that off. And immediately I was like, is that still something that's true? You don't put metal in the microwave? I mean, I haven't recently, but I remember that very much growing up.
I think probably you shouldn't. I don't know.
I think I should try it.
I don't think it's a thing they can fix per se. I think it's part of like the nature of microwaves that you don't want to.
We haven't elevated past that technology.
Yeah.
So
physics kind of works one way. That's it.
Of course, they set the joint on fire, and which makes the sprinklers engage, and immediately they start multiplying once again.
I love the body horror nature of the transformations in this, like where the gremlins are spawning the little gremlins on the back. It's so creepy.
I noticed in this one, too, you can see little tiny gremlin faces below the pustules, which I don't think that we saw in the first one. So this could be
we didn't have the pustule technology then.
Advanced in puppet technology. Yes. Yeah. So in Mr. Clamp's office, he gets very excited about dictating memos, which I thought was very, very adorable. Ooh, let's do a memo. But outside, his secretary is about ready to reach for a sandwich, and she grabs a sandwich that has a mousetrap on it, which she eats. And then when Clamp comes out, the gremlin is there typing. So for the sake of the kill count at the end of the episode, did this secretary die or just lose her tongue?
We
don't see a whole lot of deaths in this movie.
I assumed that she had died just because she's been replaced. But I don't know.
By a gremlin.
Yeah. It's one of those like Batman punches a ninja and the ninja falls off a building into water. Where it's like, probably, but we have no way of knowing for sure.
Because we don't see you could argue that Leonard Maltin dies in a little bit because he gets strangled by film reels. Yeah. But can
you argue that Leonard Maltin is a person though?
He might be a lemon.
Interesting.
This kind of begins for the full second half of this movie. It's just full blown chaos. Bits. This is where my notes definitely get sporadic at best. I wrote at one point, there are too many bits to keep track of here. But Billy tries to tell Clamp about what's going on and tries to get him and Forrester to evacuate, and they could go all over New York. There's even gremlins in little city worker uniforms. There's a bit where the elevator descends with Phoebe Cates inside of it. My favorite part of that was just where she asked to sound the alarm.
Elevator, stop! Sound alarm.
Is the fire alarm around here, or did we get that already? Because that, I think, is my single favorite bit of the movie. I think the fact that there's a fire alarm that is a guy basically just extolling the majesty of fire. It's like
fire, the untamed element, oldest of man's mysteries, giver of warmth, destroyer of forests. Right now, this building is on fire.
And everyone who's hearing it, they're sort of confused for a moment before they get to the important part.
We're back up in the medical lab, and the gremlins start wreaking havoc in there. This is where we get the famous brain gremlin. We get Bat Gremlin. Brain gremlin injects Bat Gremlin with an anti-sunlight syringe, and he flies away.
I just love that they have just vials that it's such like a child brain thing of just it's just a potion that turns you into smart or whatever.
Right.
And it's just they're
smart. Bat wings.
Yeah, they're just lousy with the stuff.
Vegetable,
yeah.
There's at one point where the vegetable gremlin is getting an injection full of salad dressing for some reason. But yeah, Brain Gremlin is fantastic. He might be my favorite gremlin in this movie. I'm not sure, but just listening to him talk,
he's up there.
He eventually gets on one of the TV studios and explains what we want.
Fred, what we want is, I think, what everyone wants and what you and your viewers have. Civilization.
I kept trying to place whatever his accent was supposed to be and just couldn't do it. And I love it.
It's Tony Randall who's doing the voice. I think he's just doing high class, he's doing but that's such a funny bit too when he's interviewed about it. Because, as you have said, these critters, that's a different movie. These creatures just want to rascal around. They don't have wants. And so, Tony Randall Brain Gremlin is just kind of messing with them there, too.
Right.
It's that's such an absurd question to ask a gremlin. They don't have an end game. They're gremlins.
Yeah, I guess they also managed to crash the economy because they're down in the New York Stock Exchange. And now he says we encourage our investors to get on board with canned food and shotguns, which I'm guessing the economy is collapsing out in the outside world. We get a Wilhelm scream at some point, of course. Then we get, definitely my favorite as a kid moment, which was the Batwing Gremlin escaping and flying out. Now, there's something about the effect that I love when it goes after Fetterman. It's funny to me anyway that he singles out Fetterman and starts flying at him. But just the way that the effect is done, and maybe the way Dante directed the crowd, but nobody else on the streets of New York seems to understand that Fetterman is like swatting at this giant creature. And Dan, is that just how New York is? Everybody in New York is so self-obsessed, man. Like they don't care, you know.
I'm self-obsessed. We've just got shit to do. We can't be dealing with your gremlin drama.
Right.
Like we gotta be places. No, it's true. Like it's like there's a shot of like it's like just like following him down the street while he's batting at the gremlin, and everyone, if they're reacting at all, they're reacting to him. They're reacting to Murray. Like what's his deal?
When he finally does get to dump cement on the gremlin, that's when people do start to kind of like watch what he's doing. And then, then the gremlin flies up to the cathedral and turns into a gargoyle, which is just beautiful. And I think that cathedral should consider putting up a gremlin cathedral in real life in New York City for that.
It's a dumb joke. It's identified as the Cathedral of Saint Eva Marie, of course, a reference to Eva Marie Saint. It's the cathedral actually, I believe, it's up by Columbia. I don't know what the name of it is, but I used to work up there, so I saw that place.
I was going to say, have you made the pilgrimage? I'm sure you have. Yeah.
I was very enamored with the fact that Fetterman has his luggage with him, that he won't keep it in the hotel. Like it's going to be with him at all times.
Yes.
I saw that too. I'm like, what's going on here? Is this because theoretically they're gonna go stay with Billy the next night and we're seeing them walk around with it? I don't know.
But I just took it as to his like continued paranoia of like, the city, a foreigner might get them.
Dr. Christopher Lee is worried, and then this is then where the gremlins break the film. And do you remember your reaction when you saw this in the theater? Did it get one over on you as a kid?
That's what I was thinking about. I was, I feel like privileged to have seen this in a situation where it could legitimately have freaked me out and freaked out the audience. And I think we were watching like, oh man, did it, like, for half a second you're like, oh, did the film break? And it's timed well, so it's not like so long that you actually get worried that you see the gremlin shadows come up, and the gremlin shadow turning into the possible Abe Lincoln shadow got a huge laugh.
So
I remember.
Good. Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I like. Well, and then they ended up for video. I think they made like a version for video where it's like slightly different, which I thought was very fun.
Yeah, it's like switching through channels, I think, and or something like that. And Gremlins are in other movies.
Yeah, I think they end up in a John Wayne movie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
this was such like again this formative experience, or has ruined my mind so much that I recently watched. To fill in gaps in my movie watching, I watched Ingmar Bergman's Persona, which I'd never seen before. And that moment in the movie where the film breaks, there was a thought in the back of my head that was now is when Hulk Hogan shows up. That's what that means. Movie. Yeah. Is that when the film breaks, Hulk Hogan shows up and saves it.
For sure. So yes, the Hulkster shows up and vows to go take care of the gremlins.
I looked into whether this was like an actual nudie cutie that they were showing, like
the
volleyball holiday. Yeah. The consensus online seems to be that, like, this is old footage from like some nudist picture that they would show horny men of the day, but that the title is new that they have placed on it.
They couldn't get the rights.
Yeah.
But I love this thing is full of cameos of people that Joe Dante likes. You got John Ass in the beginning, you got Paul Bartel showing up here as the movie theater guy who's very, very funny. And it's like, if you watched Nick at Night at all in the 90s, you saw a lot of familiar faces. Henry Gibson, all these people.
I liked how Paul Bartel is so, like, it makes sense that he's like, unfazed by the woman complaining. But then when he realizes that the gremlins have taken over his theater, he is equally unfazed. He's just like, I got to deal with this.
We just show these movies, madam. We don't make them.
I quit. Call the union. Call the National Guard. Those things have taken over the projector. They refuse to show the rest of the film. All they want to see is Snow White, the Seven Dwarfs.
Enough! I'll take care of this.
Back in the lab, Gremlin drinks some chemicals and turns into pure electricity.
Of course.
Which will probably come up later. We get a Phantom of the Opera gremlin. So this is we are hitting the speedometer all the way to the top here with just whatever stupid gremlins you can throw in, whatever props you want to build in. The Phantom of the Opera one to me is just so funny because I'm not saying every one of the other ones fit somehow, but why would there be a Phantom of the Opera who's brooding in this tower?
Well, infamously now, or famously rather, there's that Key and Peele sketch where it's they're riding Gremlins 2 and this one guy, just whatever idea they have goes in the movie. And they asked, the Onion AV Club asked Joe Dante about that. And he went, yeah, pretty much that's how it went. It's basically like, if you have an idea, we're like, yep, that sounds good.
Let's do it.
I have such complex feelings about that sketch because I think it's really funny. On the one hand, like I do like it, but on the other hand, it makes it out like, yeah, it may be any idea that you want goes in the movie, but it makes it out like it was done sort of haphazardly or like they didn't know what they were doing or something like that. It was just like, no, they wanted to make a silly movie.
Yeah, it's a little bit more cynical than what the reality was. In a way that, they're like, well, we need to make this bigger and like we could do more merchandising or something. Like, all right, you want merchandising? Here's a Phantom of the Opera gremlin. Sell that.
I want that one. Yeah. Christopher Lee gets totally zapped by Electro Gremlin. Finally, a gremlin drinks the spider fluid, which I think the camera panned over earlier. He drinks it while laughing about the fact that he's leaking through bullet holes, too. So
that's Mohawk now is the spider.
When he starts turning into the spider gremlin, Slayer's Angel of Death plays, which was fantastic. I hear that every single time. Yeah, more bits, more wrestling around. And this whole time, Gizmo is now training. He's pumping iron, he's hitting a bag, and he's building a paperclip bow and arrow in the form of John Rambo.
Yes, he watched earlier, and I like the line. And later, it's Billy points out that they must have pushed him too far.
Yeah. Which they got Stallone's okay with, and nice. I'm glad that he had a sense of humor about it. Yeah, this is now Grandpa is interviewing the Brain Gremlin, which we touched on before. Brain Gremlin does shoot another gremlin.
Now, was that civilized? No, clearly not. Fun, but in no sense civilized.
So, okay, now we get to Clamp's plan. Would anybody like to describe the plan involving the tapestry and the clocks, because it makes about this much sense, but I think I understand it.
It's a heavily automated building, so they're able to control all the clocks. They have set all the clocks forward. They're going to make their move at 4:20, where I'm like, okay, someone doing a little. And they've put all the gremlins are going to gather downstairs in the big atrium with the big windows because they know that they're going to go outside at dark and bedevil all of New York City. And so they've put a big scrim over the thing, a painted scrim, very cartoony looking. I think that's very funny that this is going to fool them, and they're going to drop it, because the gremlins then will be hit with sunlight, killing them all.
Okay.
Plan.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. And Clamp is very on board with this because he does get the idea like he's going to save New York City. Kind of like the mayor in Ghostbusters, I get. Like, doesn't he get like a little pumped up at the idea of saving the city? Yeah.
You've just saved the lives of millions of registered voters.
That's it.
I think when I went to New York because I went to New York in like 1991 as a kid. And I think I looked at every single tree on the street to see if there was an elevator underneath, because I was so enamored with Donald Clamp's escape route.
Yes. This is where Phoebe Cates starts to give her speech about Lincoln's birthday. Something bad happened to her on that day in her childhood, which I believe she was flashed as a child.
This is the idea of this. Yeah, this is when I was a kid. You're so proud when you get something, I'm like, oh, they're doing a callback. Yes. I thought it was, I still think it's hilarious, but I thought it was really funny. And I love how Billy looks in the background, how impatient he looks, where you get the sense that Kate has a trauma for every holiday that she talks about. He's just like, we don't have time for this right now, honey.
In the lobby, all the gremlins are gathering together, and they start singing New York, New York. Now, here's the thing. For the past few weeks, I've been having in my head, and I think I've always thought this for some stupid reason, like the first Gremlins take place during Christmas, and Gremlins 2 takes place during New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
There's no other thing in this movie that makes it takes place in New Year's Eve. I just associate New York, New York with New Year's Eve. And so I've always thought like, oh, they must be in there on New Year's Eve. And that's why they all...
There's that falling confetti.
And some tuxedos and stuff like that. So I realized I was wrong for these past 4 weeks. Talking about Gremlins 2 as a New Year's Eve movie. I guess I just shouldn't stay in on New Year's Eve and watching this movie anymore as a thematic thing and get out and live life.
That's what you should learn from the Gremlins. Appreciate the small things.
There's a cha-cha line. You know, Lady Gremlin is singing.
Yeah, this is basically like the shunting of rascaling. Like this is the peak rascaling. It's all just, I mean, the whole like last third of this movie is just off the wall. Like as soon as it's already starting, but like once the film breaks, it's just chaos.
I thought this was so funny this time around because they're all just like gathered together doing bits. Like there's no longer any humans around that they're fucking with. They're just doing bits for their own amusement. And like there's a pipe organ there for the Phantom of the Opera gremlin for some reason. Like they're doing like old Busby Berkeley style things with printed cards that flip over.
Who is that for? It does not matter.
Yeah.
They're having fun.
Dance number. You know, that is where Lady Gremlin ascends, you know, and the spotlight is on her coming from somewhere and she gets to sing for a while. And all very New Year's Eve is what I'm saying. This is very,
obviously.
There's a feeling of rebirth.
Yes. At this point, at Billy's direction, Futterman sprays down the lobby with a fire hose, and all of us are thinking, "Oh no, why are you doing this? Like you're you fool! You're going to multiply even further." But no, somehow they have control over Electro Gremlin, and he pops out of the telephone and just
he's been on hold. Up in Daniel Clamp's office, and they transfer it down. It's an airtight.
That is how electricity works
scientifically.
Yes. Makes sense. Okay, this is why we have you on. But Gremlin logic, man. But yeah, the electricity Gremlin just shoots all over the lobby, zapping everybody, and causes a very long scene of them all melting. Yeah. And I did look up some deleted scenes of this, and there's about 20 minutes worth of deleted footage, and there's even more footage of them all melting. Yeah. I do love the one gremlin that has a witch's hat on that says "I'm melting" as he dies.
Going out doing a bit. It's great.
Yeah, gotta respect it.
I too looked up the deleted scenes after watching it, and you know, most of them. They're right to delete. Like it's a lot of extraneous stuff. The one that I kind of like is early on. Grandpa Fred's show gets interrupted by gremlins, and at first he's just like, "Oh, cool! Like they finally got me some better puppets," you know, like which is kind of a neat moment. Right. But I think the rest of it, is wisely left on the floor.
There's some good audio gags. Like ever since I started working through lunch, I've lost 10 pounds and everybody says I look great, you know? And then there is a bit where the same audio comes on and says, you know, I've been thinking Mr. Clamp would make a great president, which makes the Trump thing even worse.
I'd rather have Clamp, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'd rather have this fictitious guy that I like.
Yeah.
Right. Seems like a nice man. Just a little lonely, maybe.
You know? Got to surround him with good policy people so that he'll just like glom onto whatever idea they say.
Well, I love that when the SWAT team comes in after their thing has melted, Donald Clamp's in charge of it for some reason.
He's got a gun and everything. Yeah.
And it's like trying to order them around. It was pretty ridiculous.
So all the gremlins melt. Grandpa gets a promotion. He's been doing live in the shit coverage with the poor stereotypical Asian man tourist guy with the camera. who's
Getty Watanabe, who was Long Duck Dong, also in 16 Candles. So I guess they plundered that.
Right. He is very excited. He is the camera, as he says, to be covering with Mr. Grandpa here. All's well that ends well. Clamp decides that what he next needs to do is impulsively build a small town. So we've never had small towns before, so we need to do that now.
This is what I've been looking for.
You want to buy it?
No, I want to build it for my next project over in Jersey. This is terrific. This is what people want now, the traditional community thing. Quiet little towns, back to the earth. Is this your concept?
Well,
It's our hometown.
That's even better. I love that. It's Clamp Corners, where life slows down to a crawl.
Yeah, well, it's also that kind of idea of almost like predicting a reboot where it's like, we got to go back. Like, this was too insane. We got to go back to the small stuff. We got to capture that feeling again.
Right. Go back to our roots.
But that's never going to work.
Yada.
But Donald Clamp's.
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me now, because I kind of forgot the history of this. Is her name being Marla a reference to Marla Maples? Is that an in-joke there?
I would think so.
Oh, yeah. One of Trump's exes. Because that's
probably
there's a romantic thing possibly at the end, but he makes Marla his head of public relations. That just now occurred to me. I'd forgotten that a little bit.
Then, the best scene of the movie, oddest scene of the movie, Dr. Forster is up. He's in the men's room recovering, and Lady Gremlin comes on to him, and he's kind of into it.
Yeah, well, she's proposing marriage to him. She's
proposing marriage, so at least she's going to make him an honest man. Here at the end.
Yeah, Picardo's character is in like in lockdown, I guess, up there. Like they can't get to him. So I guess he's like, his attitude is kind of like,
when in Rome,
going to be here a while.
What else am I gonna?
Yeah. Evidently, that was just one take that they did of him giving that facial expression like he's into it. And even Joe Dante made fun of him on the day for doing that. Is like, all right, dude, that's enough. And then he ended up using that take in the final film.
And you know what? He was vindicated by decades of people horny for that Lady
That's
Gremlin.
True. So, I think he even posted a photo of himself on his Instagram or something like that at one point with the Lady Gremlin on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
As he's laying in bed. So.
Just a trailblazer for weird horniness. Hats off to you, Robert Picardo.
Yeah.
Look, Greta owns her sexiness.
Yes, of course.
She's like, she's feeling herself. Great stuff. Pull it back up, my finger.
Lowered this tapestry I made of her.
Right. The one Lady Gremlin.
Yeah.
That we know of. And that's it. That's it for Gremlins 2. I would say that we can throw to honoring our dead, but again, I don't think any Gremlins or I don't think any people died in this movie.
I think Christopher Lee dies because they're chomping at him.
All right. Well, if anybody that deserves a memorial, let's honor our dead. Leonard Maltin, played by Leonard Maltin, strangled by film reels. Cushing Catheter, played by Christopher Lee, electrocuted by Electro Gremlin. Good save. I would have not lived with myself if I would have skipped over Christopher Lee of all people.
I mean, that's the thing about Gremlins. Like you say, the series about small monsters. You've been talking about rascaling around. Like the Gremlins are only interested in rascaling. If people die, that is a side effect of them doing what to them are like hilarious Looney Tunes style pranks.
Was it funny? That's the only concern.
It's like Homer saying that I'm going to go like this, pie, and if you get in my way, then I might eat you.
Exactly.
And that's your fault.
And that pie is society.
Right. But yeah, I mean, great movie. And I will continue to watch this one over and over and probably find new jokes every time I watch it.
I mean,
so.
it is wild to me that like it gets it's got that reputation because it seems like a very natural progression of the weirdness of the first one. Like you just, you remove some of the soft sort of more Spielbergian touches, I suppose, but it is just thematically very similar and it just is even zanier.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about it a lot as a satire of sequels, and I've always found that a little overstated because other than like, yeah, we do like a funny callback here or there, or like we bring all the characters back, even if it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't think there's a lot of direct stuff there, but I think it is sort of in a more meta sense a satire of sequels, in that it's like Joe Dante being like, I don't care about a damn Gremlin sequel. I'm going to use the sequel to shove in everything that I think is funny or is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, taking movies that we've done, like Friday the 13th, for example, how each one gets subsequently goofier because they're just desperate for ideas.
Yeah.
He just went, well, what if we just did all of that right now in this? Just combine all that weird stuff. If you have a weird idea, let's throw it in there. And so that, like, kind of heading it off at the pass that you could make more of it. Because what are you going to do different? I've done it all right now. And yeah, so I agree with that, where it's like it is, but it's also having just watched Joker 2. Like, this was made out of, there's still love for the first one in this. Like, it's still like, this is all very dumb and silly, but I'm having so much fun with it. Versus, hey, everyone, sorry for the first movie.
Right. And I also, it's not only his love of 50s monster movies and Looney Tunes combined, but then I'm sure it was a lot of fun to even experiment with how much the puppetry and the animatronics had grown in those 6 years. Of course, the person who created all the Gremlins in the first movie was asked back to make the Gremlins in the second one, but instead he wanted to direct, and so he directed The Fly Part 2. Which I remember not thinking not as bad as everybody said it was, but it's hard to follow up The Fly.
Yeah,
of course.
Eric Stoltz is in that, isn't he?
Yeah, written by Mick Garris, and it's all right, but like, how can you follow The Fly?
it is kind of funny that to come back and do this and have it be even bigger when you read about the first Gremlins and how Joe Dante was like, I'm so tired of these goddamn puppets. But to be like, no, let's have even more of them this time, and even wilder ones.
Yes. Yeah. Some of those scenes in the lobby, especially, where it just shows the sheer number of puppets in there. Although my eye, once you notice that there's one Gremlin that looks like he's just stapled to the barrier up top, and he's not moving at all. And so there's all this wonderful puppet action coming, and I'm just looking at the one guy who's like completely solitary.
It's like that when Billy shows up with Grandpa Fred with that bat on a string. You're like looking for that Gremlin that's just clearly on a string, just being dangled from somewhere.
Great. Love it all, though. Well, I think that's going to do it for Gremlins Part 2. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan. Always a blast to talk Gremlins with you. Is there anything that you want to plug on your end?
I listen to the podcast I'm on, the Flophouse. It's me and Stuart Wellington, who is on your Critters wrap up, and Elliot Kalin, who is also a huge Gremlins 2 fan. I think was on some podcast where he got to talk to Joe Dante, which was must have been a dream for him. And we talk about bad movies. We joke a lot. We try not to be too mean about anything because we're all lovers of movies and creative people ourselves, but we have fun. And also, I was talking about to these guys before we started recording, like, for public consumption, Gremlins must have really wormed into my brain, because I was realizing that, like, the screenplay that I wrote that I'm now trying to get someone to look at, if there's someone out there who wants to make a movie, get in touch. It's a horror movie, a light horror movie set at Christmas. So clearly the DNA has recombined with me in a Christopher Lee style way.
The boy has become a man. The Mogwai has become a gremlin. You've grown up for this. Oh, I mean, how can we close out this without asking what your favorite gremlin is?
I think it is the brain gremlin, but I do have a strong soft spot for both Greta and the spider.
The spider approaching Marla in the spider web.
Very sexy.
Right.
I'm not ashamed to say it.
From the spider point of view or the Marla point of view?
I mean, like, they frame it like they make it a sexy moment, like, of her like trapped in the web. It is clearly meant to be like evocative of, I don't know, Creature from the Black Lagoon or something, like a woman in peril in the cover of a pulp magazine
for sure.
sort of thing.
Yes. And you, John?
Well, it was the sad realization this time around that I'm the grumpy gremlin that just makes a face, goes, "Bleh," and then dies like that.
Right.
But as far as ones that I actually like, the brain's good, and I really like the electric gremlin. It's just kind of, but it just gets turned into electricity. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go brain. It's hard to. He gets so much great screen time.
I mean,
screen
Tony
time
Randall.
and jokes, and he gets to actually speak his jokes, which is a lot of fun. So yeah. All right, everyone. Let us know what your favorite gremlin is. You can write in. You can comment on the Instagram. Just let us know what gremlin you identify the most with. That's always like John and the Grumpy Gremlin.
Which one speaks to you?
All right, everyone. Well, next week we'll be back with our Gremlins wrap up. And until then, you can find us on Instagram at This May Heard a Bit Pod, Heard a Bit Pod on YouTube, and email us at thismayheardabitpod@gmail.com. So join us next week for the wrap up and hear what we're going to be covering after that in the new year. So until then, good night.
Good night.
This has been a Caretaker Press production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayheardabitpod and email us at thismayheardabitpod@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review over on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.